I get a lot of criers in the lap dance room.
Really?
I do. And that feels like really kind of an honor. Knowing that I'm autistic helps me check in to be like, I'm annoyed by the smell that nobody else can smell.
Who are you?
A writer, stripper, dominatrix, podcaster, bikini barista, about 7 different jobs, and they all pretty much relate to sex.
You've interviewed close to 100 people.
400 or 500. My mom walks by with a basket of laundry. She's like, "Oh, that girl looks like you." Is that you? I'm a nude model on the internet.
How did you even get the confidence to be posting yourself nude online at 18 or 19?
I knew that I wanted to be hot. I've always had a patch of pubic hair. It's my siren song. A lot of strippers cringe when we see a group of women coming. And I remember being like, "Hey, Brian, results are in. I'm autistic." When I start dating someone, I need to know what they smell like.
How do you make sense of an autistic response versus the fact that you were being bullied?
I would say a survivor of suicide loss, the love of my life at that time, and one of my best friends both died by suicide within 6 months of each other. I'm not racist. I'm autistic.
What's the craziest amount of money you've ever said no to?
Welcome to today's episode of Getting to Know You. I'm your host, Cameron Edward Benton, and on today's episode, I have the great pleasure of introducing you to Elle Stanger. Elle, also known as StripperWriter, is an advocate for sex workers. She's been a stripper and a writer for quite some time. She's been a nude model since 2005 and has been involved in touch work since 2009, which is where there's some form of physical contact involved. She does adult content and other forms of media, and she's been recently diagnosed in the last couple of years with autism. So we talk a lot about her journey through becoming a sex worker to being diagnosed with autism and the full spectrum, no pun intended, about who she is. Elle is a fantastic human being, and I really love in this episode to simply pay attention to just how compassionately and curiously she looks at the world. They have such a broad spectrum of ideas that they're so passionate about looking at, referencing, often looking at and understanding that their own perspective is not the only one that ought to matter, that they're always questioning and looking for a deeper level of truth, and that allows them to have a really deep and rich experience. I think you're going to be blown away by Elle's intelligence, her curiosity, her creativity, and just for her delightful, humorous personality. So without further ado, here is Getting to Know Elle Stanger.
Who are you?
Oh, am I supposed to actually respond to the question? I'm like, you're doing your intro now. So my name is Elle Stanger. This is the question you were surprising me with, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, you got me. It worked. My name is Elle Stanger. I am so many things. It's really hard for me to summarize them sometimes. I think of myself as a writer, but I am most known as StripperWriter because I've been working as a full-time pole dancing stripper for, in this year, 16 years.
Wow.
In June, 16 years. I slept on my face, just woke up, rolled out of bed, came here recording, so that's why I'm so bleary-eyed. I worked a shift last night. I am a certified sexuality educator. So I spend a lot of my time thinking about, talking about, noticing about, researching about sexuality because I work as an educator in some realms and then an entertainer in others. But I have about 7 different jobs and they all pretty much relate to sex. So I'm currently a writer, stripper, dominatrix, podcaster, bikini barista, a couple of legal things I can't mention. Teacher. I'm a board of director for a 501c3 by and for people in the industry and survivors of trafficking.
Wow.
What else? I know I'm forgetting a couple of things. But I work around sex and entertainment for a few reasons. One, I've always been interested in sexuality. And when I say always, I mean back to childhood. I don't have any child care or child sexual abuse in my history. So this is not a sticky time or there's no context. You know, that is the context for that. That's not the same for everyone. So I think the fact that I have a less traumatized foundation gives me more ability to sometimes be around some things that are triggering for other people. I do have partner violence in my history. Um, and there's some caregiver trauma, but it doesn't really relate to sex. So
Mm.
I have worked as a facilitator or an educator in therapy groups. This is how this is related. Um, and so I try to, as much as I can, learn about myself. Who am I? You know, what makes me feel good? How can I make the world a better place?
Mm-hmm.
How can I get off? All these things that are important to me. I also try to remain objective and notice that what I'm into and my preferences and my history, my story, what I like is totally different in, a billion ways from everybody else. So I am very informed by the feedback that I get from the people that I, put hands on in lap dance,
Mm.
the people I sexed with, the people I make porn for.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things I didn't mention. I do webcam and fetish videos and request
Mm-hmm.
videos. Um, the people that come to me asking for consultation, who need information or resources around a sexual health issue. Sometimes people have questions where what they're actually seeking is a therapist. I'm
Mm.
not a therapist. That's not my education, my complete background. I have training in therapeutic practices in education or
Mm-hmm.
in therapy spaces just because of the people I've trained with and how it all relates. Um, but I can offer information and resources as a certified sexuality educator. I can refer people to all of my other brilliant, interesting, smart friends who do work in therapy or counseling. So, who I am, and this is to sum up your first question, is I am an almost 39-year-old queer, currently polyamorous adult who's been a parent for 13 years this week.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. I am twice divorced, still friends with one of them. Uh, the husband I moved to Portland, Oregon with 17 years ago owns a salon in town. When we moved here, he wanted to do hair, and now he owns a
Mm.
salon. He cuts my hair, so
Hmm.
I feel very full circle in my journey to Portland as an adult in my relationships in this community right now. So that's how I find myself.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. That's a very deep and well-rounded experience. I think it's one of the things I've always appreciated about you. I don't even know how long I've been following you. I was trying to figure that out. Um, but it's been a while. And I think one of the things that's really cool is seeing how rich and complex you are. Like you have such a very full life. You have a lot of presence. And I think something I've also appreciated about you is you are a very strong advocate without also uh, becoming very policing, right? You've had a way of communicating, I find, that's often very supportive and encouraging and seeing nuance in a lot of different challenging issues throughout this experience.
That's really nice to hear about not being policing because I do have to manage and check in about am I being a control freak or am
Mm.
I trying to help? And I think that's something a lot of people do when they're caught up in their, notions of altruism, like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this is to make the world a better place. And you see the way some of them conduct themselves. And it's like, yeah, but at what cost?
Right.
Um, and I am a critical, cynical, pretty negative person. A
Mm.
lot of the time, I know where I get that from. It's both my parents, um, and also probably the autism. But when I was a kid, and this is like autistic people tend to have strong sense of justice or morals or ethics,
Mm.
and also are interested in other people. I thought I wanted to work in law enforcement or detective work where it's like, oh, we'll catch the bad guys. Except that it's not like it is on TV. I got my criminology degree, looked around at the people who wanted to get into policing, and some of them were monsters
Mm.
and some of them weren't. But I'm like, oh, this is how it happens. There's people
Hmm.
driving the aggression and then other people just, following orders.
Hmm.
So the systems, a lot of them are just very well designed, intangible and tangible structures for abuse.
Hmm.
Like a lot of policing is abusive. And we look at people who have been incarcerated multiple times, and a lot of them are incredibly fucking traumatized. And then
Hmm.
when you talk to them about how they were treated, you start to understand why. Um, I'm getting choked up. I'm also I would say, a survivor of suicide loss.
Hmm.
The love of my life at that time, and one of my best friends, both died by suicide within 6 months of each other in
Wow.
2021.
Wow.
And yeah, and that is a whole other series of complicated, not even complicated, but complex conversations. I understand them. I understand how these people got to those points, but they were very traumatized and they felt very alone.
Yeah.
So, but they had been traumatized not only by individuals in their lives, but by teachers, healthcare providers, people who were supposed to help them.
Yeah. No, you're totally good. I
I
really
cry a
appreciate you
lot
sharing.
too. Thank
Great.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a big
Yeah.
crier.
Cool.
And yeah, and I tell friends, I'm like, I'm okay. This is just the shit coming out. I encourage people to cry as long as like the folks around you feel safe. Like nothing bad is actually happening. I'm just processing.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
You're, of course. Yeah. I remember seeing you in a small clip, and you started tearing up, and you're like, no, 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 keep this, because you could tell the person was like starting, I think, to be uncomfortable a little bit, and you're
It's,
like,
I think
let
I know what
them.
you're talking about. Like, no, this hasn't happened to you before, has it? Well, it has now. I'm your first crier. I get a lot of criers in the lap dance room.
Really?
I do. And that feels like really kind of an honor. The first few times it happened, granted, I was probably like 23 or 24 the first couple times it happened because I started stripping when I was 22. So again, I'll be 39 this year. And so now when it happens, I'm like, ah, yes, I know how to handle this. Here we are. This is not my bread and butter, but like this is the icing. Like
Hmm.
I feel like such a capable. I get off on feeling like I'm helping, really is
Mm-hmm.
what it is, you know?
Yeah.
So it feels good for me if someone feels safe enough or just relaxed enough where they can let go in maybe a loud, boisterous bar, strip club.
Yeah.
We're in like a lap dance room, but they're screaming and shouting and crashing and music, and I'm hugging another adult and they're sobbing.
Mm-hmm.
And I might be naked, and it's beautiful, and you don't really see that very often, ever.
Yeah, I actually would love to dig into that a bit more. Can you kind of walk us through, and maybe with a story if you want to, some of the misconceptions about maybe a strip club from what people kind of see or experience from the outside, not maybe knowing that experience? Like I've only been to like maybe 2 or 3 strip clubs in my life, and I grew up very conservative and Christian, and so like I think there can be sometimes often a lot of like, here's one perspective on what is looks like and happening, and that can be very true. But I know from hearing some of your stories that can look different. So I'd love for you to share.
Right. So my limitation is for all of the years that I've been stripping 3 to 5 nights a week in Portland area, I've
Mm.
only worked in Portland
Hmm.
and suburban cities. So Tigard, Beaverton, Clackamas, um, in Oregon. So I've only danced in Oregon.
Hmm.
I love talking to travel dancers and people I'm working with and friends about what they experience in other states, but I can't speak
Hmm.
to anything except for Oregon. And Oregon is a little unique because, unlike a lot of other places in the United States, we have alcohol and full nudity
Hmm.
and gambling, mostly in the form of video lottery machines,
Hmm.
sometimes in the form of Texas Hold'em or card table games.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's not many, but a couple of the clubs that I've worked in for long times have hosted those, and that can be a hoot. That's a
Fascinating.
whole, gamblers are so their own other animal. It's so yeah. And the overlaps between gamblers and bartenders and comedians and strippers, I'm like, "Ugh, greasy. Some of you think greasy. This is why I don't read or write fiction because I don't need to because I'm around interesting, weird strangers all the time. So anyway, so Oregon has all these things which can contribute to really specifically diverse
Hmm.
environments. And when I say that, I mean that they are lacking in diversity in other ways. Oregon's a very white state. There's a history of why. So Black dancers and dancers of color will tell you what they deal with when they work here in terms of
Hmm.
racism. I am white. I do not deal with those things. So again, that's a limitation to my perspective. In Oregon clubs, many of them, though, a lot of the dancers, and it's been like this since I started, and I hear the history, a lot of us are more likely to be tattooed, pierced, hair short,
Hmm.
hairy dancers. Like full
Hmm.
bush in Portland was a thing. It's always been a thing. It's
Hmm.
not been a very common thing, but there's usually like one hairy stripper per
Hmm.
shift, you know, if they know what's
Yeah.
good for them, give the people what they want. So yeah, Bush is coming back on social media, or they're like, Bush is here, and I'm like, for some of us, it never left. Um, I'm not a full bush person, but to give your audience a visualization, if some of you still haven't seen me naked and you live in this fair city, I've always had a patch of pubic hair, and I very specifically, when I am allowed in the venue, I will do bottoms off first
Hmm.
because this is for multiple reasons. You're about to learn a lot. A lot of dancers, even with, still like some hairy dancers existing, a lot of them would shave mostly bare or a lot of it, because that's been the fashion since the
Hmm.
2000s for,
Yeah.
for a lot of like conventional pornographic media culture. So I immediately want the whole room to know I have pubic hair, because what
Hmm.
you don't want to fix, you can feature. And someone all the way
Hmm.
across the room, even if your vision is bad, you can't see the definition of my genitals, but you can see the dark patch and it will call to you. It's my siren song.
Hmm.
So that's like on purpose. That's how I like my body. And that's a thing that I don't have to change. If I worked in a
Hmm.
club where they said you have to shave everything off, that I don't work in any clubs like that. And I don't know if that's a thing still. And I would love to hear from dancers. But there are some environments, some venues where the owner is literally like, show me your manicure.
Hmm.
You're not tan enough. Shave your pussy.
Hmm.
Don't hear about it too much, but yeah. So Portland, we're more likely to be like a little more body diverse. There's not that many bigger body dancers. Like there's not enough because again, people like everything, all
Hmm.
things, and everybody deserves the right to be sexy and work it. But there's definitely clubs where you can be a bigger body dancer. We're allowed to wear sneakers. A lot of places you
Hmm.
can't wear flats at all. So you'll get cowboy boots, ballet slippers. I actually have some pink high top Converse Chucks
Hmm.
that I packed for my shift today that I'm doing in a few hours
Hmm.
after this, because I know that a regular is coming in and he hates heels and he loves the sneakers.
Nice.
Yeah, so it really doesn't matter which ones, but he'll be delighted that I brought those with him in mind. And he hasn't come in for months and months. He was having some health issues, so
Hmm.
this is like our big reunion.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so Oregon clubs are pretty interesting. You are more likely to be able to dance to some variety of music. Again, it depends what club you're in.
Hmm.
The racism in Oregon that I mentioned earlier, there's still clubs here because we're not Atlanta and there's more
Hmm.
white people. There's still clubs here that can get away with not playing rap.
Hmm.
And their excuse is they don't want to draw the wrong crowd, such as gang
Hmm.
members. But really, it's like, do you mean black people? Like,
Yeah.
so that's bullshit. And usually that rule will come and go in some venues when the owner is a racist piece of shit. But like the audience hates that rule because rap music and hip hop and R&B is good and fun and rich and a part of our culture. So
Yeah.
it ends up getting played again, and then the owner will come in and be like, change it.
Hmm.
None of the places where I work, but like I've worked at this point, I want to say 12 or 13 clubs, and
Hmm.
4 of those don't exist anymore. So I can talk crap on there. I'm not necessarily going to name drop because there's too many ghosts that can haunt me in this city if I make enemies.
Yeah.
People are like, you
Yeah.
should write a book about your time here. I'm like, no, I would have to move. I'd have to move.
What's the craziest amount of money you've ever said no to?
Oh my God. This freaking guy. I forgot about this and he reminded me. So it was so bananas. I didn't even commit this to memory, but this guy reminded me. So I was giving a lap dance to a man who was complaining the whole time that really what he wanted to do was have sex with me. and how that was never on the menu, so it wasn't going to happen. And so why are we even doing this? And it's like, yeah, shut the fuck up. Why are we doing this? But he says, do you remember I offered you $50,000 and you said no? And oh, that was you? Oh, okay. Because like, let's be honest, like women and dancers, we get solicited for sex so often, multiple times a night.
Wow.
And which can be really stressful for some people, especially if you're in a situation where it's like, are you going to withhold payment or gratuity for the service I'm already rendering? Like if I'm naked on stage,
Yeah.
and I had this last night, a guy was like, I would love to just lay you down. And I was like, he's like, and look at all your tattoos. And I'm like, oh. And he's like, and then fuck the shit out of you. And I was like, there it is. Okay. So this guy, he was like, do you remember, I said 50,000 and you said no. And I was like, oh, haha, yeah, I remember that time. And he's like, why did you say no? And I said, well, probably because I don't think you have it. And then he was like, and I'm still giving him a dance at this point. I remember which club this was at. And he's like, well, I have it right now. I could show you in the ATM. And I was like, okay. And like totally called his bluff. And he didn't. And even if he did, like, I might regret this, but maybe someday I'll be in a situation where I would have let that distasteful human have time in and on top of me for that amount of money. But that time has not come. And now I don't know how to get a hold of him. So I guess, darn, it's never going to happen. Because also, when you work in hospitality and entertainment, the audiences that you will have come see you is the everyday people who don't work in entertainment themselves, and athletes, celebrities, musicians, comedians, restaurant owners, business owners. I avoid a handful of places in this city because I have met the person who owns them and I do not want to give him money. And that is a shitty way to live, actually. It really, really brings down the date when you're like, oh, I don't want to go here because the owners actually insulted me. No big deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, and when if you're dealing with enough people, like, and I've chosen to be, I didn't want to be famous. I don't want to be famous, but I've been successful in my realm to a degree that feels I'm very grateful for. I have chosen again to work 10 or 12-hour days in a variety of things. And I'm a privileged person who is resourced. I have a car, have a couple family members that could help me out when I needed. I have a home. It's bad out there right now. The economy is bad. I am so grateful despite some of the really intense, horrific struggles I wouldn't wish on anybody. I have thrived in this industry, but I have also chosen to participate in adult entertainment and sexuality in a way that a lot of people aren't interested and don't want to commit to, and I understand that as well. So,
can you say more about that? Like, in what way do you specifically commit to it, and what way do you particularly approach it?
Okay, so we talked about the bush earlier.
Mm-hmm.
We're about to hear about it again. She's making a comeback. Just kidding. She never left. She's making a reappearance. So in some parts of my body, I have hair patterns that if I shave them, it will rub against my lingerie and my dancing gear, and it will be very uncomfortable. And so I've chosen to have, about 2 years into stripping, I realized this isn't tenable for me. I can't keep dealing with razor burn or potential infections or friction, or it feels weird, or what if I want to go to the beach, God forbid, and I'm at actual daylight, because the red light covers ingrowns and stuff. Like, we all look cuter in the red light. All of us. You guys too. But you're in the daylight and it's like, oh God, razor burn. So I've chosen to have electrolysis, and like that's a couple $1,000s at this point, which I don't believe is a tax deduction, because it has to be something you can either use specifically for work or you can put on or take off for work. So like nails,
Got it.
eyelashes. So I didn't, try to deduct that. But that was a thing where I'm like, this is an expensive commitment to my body modification, because if I was working retail sales wearing pants, not shaving my pussy area for, 3 times a week, then I wouldn't be dealing with this. So that's like a commitment. Or my feet, like physical therapy wise, I grew up with a dancer mother, and some of the other women in my life were lifelong dancers. And so some of them have really fucked up bunions on their feet.
Mm.
I wear heels. I don't have to wear heels. I work in some venues that allow flats, but I am constantly doing massage
Mm.
in the form of I have some toe stretcher thingies. I do it manually. I have these little balls I step on. I do Pilates once or twice a week for 12 years because I don't
Mm.
want my bones to warp
Yeah.
and mutate. You know, like this is
Mm-hmm.
serious, like not exciting shit that people are like,
Yeah.
oh, fuck, you are a lifelong entertainer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, even when I worked as a server in a fine dining restaurant, like I used to like do a lot of like leg work and like foot massage work at the end because like you're just on your feet so long and otherwise you're in pain for that 8-hour shift and that's not fun.
Yeah, and that's the thing also, like I think about some of some of the reason I think I could strip so long or sex work in other ways, and we can talk about that maybe, in where I live so long is because I had the option to wear flat shoes for years. And when you're wearing heels all the time and you're bending and you're arching and you're slamming and you're crawling, like I'm not an exact expert, but my Pilates instructors have explained to me repeatedly that your tendons and everything will shorten. So you're more likely to pull something or snap something, even just like getting up out of bed. And I've hurt myself real bad during pole competitions or shifts, even when you're just drinking too much, you can't really feel your body. I've woken up after shifts unable to roll over to get
Mm.
out of bed, and I've popped ribs out, and I have shoulder issue. There's all kinds of stuff going on. So like, yeah, exactly. It's like constant maintenance, and you have to think of your body as an athlete. And
Yeah.
so I don't think I'd be able to maybe be a stripper if I was working in a harsher environment,
Mm.
which some girls are. So the longevity
Yeah.
that I've had is I'm really grateful for that too.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me think a lot about cheerleading to a degree, where
Mm.
with cheerleading, it's something that's actually very dangerous and takes a lot of athleticism to do. But from the outside, you're like, oh, it's a bunch of cheerleaders. In the same way, I feel like it's like these strippers and they're da da da.
Pretty.
But it's like, yeah, but it's also this very risky, potentially damaging sport if you're not kind of equipped or taking care of yourself well.
I don't know if this is true, but I can see it being true. Somebody again, please, reach out and tell us. But so my mom said that sometimes football players will be made to take ballet classes
Mm.
because it helps with their endurance and their ability to tolerate pain. And if you look at ballet dancers, like of course it looks graceful, but all their weight is on their toes.
Hmm.
Like try doing that. You can't.
Yeah, it's
um
terrible.
Right. Yeah. So the better it looks, the more it hurts is the old like modeling thing. That's the modeling thing too. Like, oh, stick your butt out more. Oh, your back hurts. Oh, you can't breathe. Okay, you're almost there. Like, the more it hurts, the better it looks, which is
I mean,
terrible
yeah.
because you don't want to be performative in all aspects of your life. But again, this is where I think it helps to have the awareness of, am I being performative? If
Mm.
so, why? Is it for money? Is it for validation? Is it
Mm.
for safety from my partner?
Mm.
Um, yeah, that's one of those things also working in entertainment versus being a human being. It can
Mm.
get kind of confusing for people, and I'll get questions about that sometimes from people too. Like, how do you keep your sanity? How do you know who you are when you're masking or performing all the time?
Yeah, well, I'm actually kind of curious about that because it seems like the way that you have described your lap dances and the kind of thing that you're drawn to. And I'm somebody who's like a pretty sensitive person. I remember the first time I was in a strip club and I don't know how to explain it other than there's like this energetic feeling that I get, but I can watch somebody dance and I'm just like, I'm not drawn to you at all. And it has nothing to do with like physicality, it has nothing to do with like
Mm-hmm.
what they're wearing really, but there's like this energy that they feel like really connected or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious about that from like your perspective because you seem to be somebody who is much more about like that deeper connection thing. Like what in your mind is like going on there? Like because it seems like a slightly differentiation between purely entertainment at that.
I smile and laugh because one of my favorite comments or compliments to get, and people will say all kinds of things. Like one guy bought a bunch of dances for me once because he's like, "You look like Jennifer Lopez, J Lo." No, I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't.
Objectively, you do not look
I know.
like Jennifer Lopez.
Yeah, I know. So like that's an example of when you have to be like, some people don't know what the fuck they're talking about and don't attach to that comment at all. But one of the comments or compliments that I've chosen to believe in that I like and that feels real to me is when people say, you have such a good energy. I really like your energy.
Yeah.
So, on the other side of that, I remember being asked by a young man who he was a douchebag. He had his own like negative vibes, but I remember he asked me, he's like, "Oh, so you're a dancer, you're a new dancer. Which kind of dancer are you? Are you the one that's dancing so hard and fast she looks like she's trying to rip the pole out of the wall? Or are you dancing like a whale on opium?" Verbatim. This was like a long time. I remember this comment, obviously.
I mean, I don't think I would ever forget that comment, and I wasn't there in person. So
You'll think, yeah. So, and to me, I was like, okay, so this guy is, what he's saying is he sees dancers moving really slow and he sees them moving really fast. And so I wonder what the middle spot is. So I also dated a woman DJ, and I'm gonna name drop her. She's not like famous or anything, but she was to the city like known. And I remember we were on a date and she told me that she can actually get the crowd, her audience, when she's DJing like dance party stuff, she can get them to move their bodies in certain ways depending on the speed of the music she plays and like the other elements to the songs. And I thought that was fascinating. So what I will do if I can is to choose music that has a certain rate, like speed, where it's like maybe like driving and fast enough to keep your interest, but it doesn't feel frantic and it's not slow enough to be relaxing. So I'll think about with my song considerations, or I'll work with a DJ where I'm like, okay, what are people going to be surrounded by in sound when I'm on stage? Everybody else I can't control. I'll just try to like vibe to whatever else anyone else is playing. But when I'm on stage, and in a lot of Portland clubs, there's one, or they're only doing one stage at a time. It's not like a multi-stage arena situation. They exist, but the main stage. So music consideration, body language. This is where being a nerd that got picked on a lot is really helpful, because I'm always thinking about, what are other people seeing? What do I look like? They don't know what's going on in here if I look like I'm calm. So you think about, I used to watch a lot of nature shows, animals, you know, hunting and chasing and fighting and breeding and giving birth and stuff. And it's like the predators always pick on the ones that look vulnerable. So you can avoid getting picked on if you just can hide that you are feeling vulnerable.
Sure. Yeah.
And this is how even someone, I have been too confident, and it has scared customers away. They've told me, they're like, "Oh, you're too good at this." I'm like, damn it. I should have like walked less confidently, you know?
I guess that makes sense for the dominatrix role that you're exploring now. So
Yeah. So, you know, you're an actor. I consider myself an actor for sure. I wouldn't put that on a resume, but constantly. So yeah, so I think what's happening when you're reading the energy, I either think it's authentic, like she, they, he, dancer is just like really feeling secure and confident and like they like the song or they're tuned in, or they're really good at faking it. Either way, you know, I tip my hat to you. I've been both people.
So you have a wonderful podcast called They Talk Sex, and you've interviewed, I think, over 100 or maybe even 200 people at this time, or 200
I think
episodes?
we have 98 episodes.
Okay, so 98 episodes. So you've interviewed close to 100 people. So I'm
But
curious.
I've been podcasting for years, so I've probably interviewed, like 400 or 500. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna give you a fun game or a challenge. So what if you were kind of taking all the wisdom and lessons that you've learned from all of those guests, and you were summarizing that down into like 3 key things that you would learn or pass on, what would they be?
Communicate, whatever that looks like to you. That one comes up a lot. Have fun with what you're doing. This usually relates to sex or relationship, because if it's not fun, why are you doing it? That doesn't mean it's going to be fun all the time. I mean, sex should be fun most of the time. I say most of the time because every once in a while something will go awry and you're like, oh, that's not what I planned, but maybe I learned something or whatever. But yeah, so communicate, have fun, or, ask yourself, why are you doing something? If you can't, this is not from my guest, but like, this is something I really want to drive home as it relates to, I think, a lot of people, especially folks working in nightlife or entertainers. If you can't do it sober, you can't do it. And I'm a dry alcoholic. So there's a lot of people, there's a lot of us too that are reliant on stuff like to get through the day. And like slow addiction is really, I think it's really, really killing and hurting us. But a lot of my guests have talked about trying to find or undertaking different steps for self-care or health or whatever. But as it relates to sex and self-care and mental health, if you cannot drink alcohol or if you can drink it way less, you might be very pleased to see how your body likes that.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you fake it, like, God, I feel like shit. My body feels like shit. My feet hurt. I'm on my period. I'm mad at like one or both of my boyfriends. Like, I got the bad parking spot. I think my car's going to get broken into. If you can like compartmentalize all that and then show up like as if you don't need the money, you don't care. And then people see that you are relaxed or confident and then they respond to you. That's a big thing. So even like when the club is slow, sometimes I'll look around and if my coworkers are all like laying on the couches or like on FaceTime with a family member or like arguing with each other, I just think about what are the optics right now for anyone who comes in? How are they going to perceive and want to engage? So I'm like I am always thinking, where is the camera and where are the eyeballs? And I think that's just like, again, being a nerd that got picked on with helicopter parents that were very critical. This is, to childhood. I don't have like I said, I don't have abuse, but I'm aware of like how I got here. I've been in therapy long enough. And then just working on stages, I'm constantly I had a sensation, this is fun. I had a sensation earlier in my living room. This morning, I was making coffee and I did the thing. I was like, the scan. And then I realized, like, there's no camera in here. This is my house.
Yeah.
Because I'm so used to thinking about it. So I don't know if my brain is being impacted. I try to do a lot of nature and like grounding activities.
Yeah.
To be quite honest.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think what you spoke there at the end of the camera aspect, I resonate with a lot. I remember I was doing a one-person show and I'd like written it all and I had never really didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I kind of like had outlined what it was going to be. And then we were doing this whole thing in a classroom and then we went to a stage. I remember stepping on the stage and being like, oh, I feel like I know what I'm doing now. Because it was just, I had grown up as an actor and a singer and performer and stuff like that. And there was something that I almost felt more at home and alive with people's attention on me than I did when I'm just like, I don't know, doing my own thing or we're not in that same set and setting.
Yes, that makes sense to me. And also, this is why I think sometimes work can be a helpful outlet when you're going through other shit in your life. Or I saw this post, it was on Instagram. It was a big stripper, like dancer account. I don't remember which one. But the question was, why is it that I feel more confident at work than I do in everyday life? And, everyone's like giving their input and I chose to leave a comment on this thread. A lot of times I don't because I'm like, I don't need to be heard all the time, but I, like to notice and see what other people think.
Sure.
But I thought it'd be helpful. So I said, because at the club, you have certain roles and tasks and things you can do, which will render you an outcome. Like, if you ask 10 people for a lap dance, one will probably say yes. So if you just keep like doing it. But yeah, so that was basically my comment. I don't remember like it verbatim, but a lot of people reacted it. And then also were like, oh my God, that's so true. And so the way I relate this to like more everyday life, if you know that you're like a socially anxious person or you have anxiety about going to a big group function or event, like baby showers, kids' birthdays, those things that like as you're becoming an adult, you're like, oh shit, I'm starting to go to these because my friends get married and having babies. Like, I don't know what the fuck to
Sure.
do. So one of the things that I suggest to people, you can always offer to the host, like, would you like me to take pictures of you and the kid, like candids, and then send them to you after, like either on
Mm,
back to your phone? People typically love this because one, now they don't have to think about it.
mm-hmm.
You've made yourself available. Some people are still going to want to take their own pictures, but like now you've
Sure.
offered them something that afterwards, like you can give them. And I don't know, this has been a thing that I've liked to do either with Instax or film photos or just
Mm,
pictures. And so now at the party, I have something to do, you know? I don't have to small talk. Sorry, the baby's walking. I got to go take a picture of it, you know? Or like, oh, can I help you clean up the snack table? Great. Now I'm going to clean up the snack table and like
yeah.
I don't have whatever. So it's like the same thing in the club, kind of. If you know how to show up and do your job, sometimes that can just be a best course of action
Yeah. Well,
to
and I
build
think,
confidence.
yeah, and totally. There's a number of things I want to like respond to in that. I think though with the work part that you kind of mentioned circling back earlier, where like there's that part where it's like authentic, right? And you're like, okay, I'm really in that vibe. I feel really good. I'm in this thing. And then there's the other part where it's like, oh, I've got to like kind of put the stress of my life down. I think that really just resonates on like the fact that this is like a profession, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's like the reality. And even as, if you're an actor or if you are performing there's the saying, the show must go on, right? And that's, I worked in service and restaurants and other things like that, or in sales jobs. And for lack of, a nicer way of saying it, it kind of doesn't matter what's going on when you have to show up and do your work. Like there's a level
Mm-hmm.
of like, you get to be professional, and there's that level of authenticity that's still there and presence that you can tune into. But you have to treat this as work.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes. Yeah. That's another thing that sometimes I don't know. If I'm spending a fair amount of my time doing something, this is just such human nature though. This is why a lot of people are depressed. Like people are depressed if they have to spend a lot of time doing something they don't like,
Yeah,
like a
agreed.
job. Right. And we see this with like depression and suicidality, if that's a word, suicidalness. That was a big
Mm-hmm.
one for one of the people that I lost, definitely. He was like, I'm gonna spend my life doing grunt work, thankless, poorly
Yeah.
paid, taxing labor, and have nothing to show for it and have no time to do the things I love, and I can't even afford the things I love. So for with me and sex work, even though as a shy, small-bodied, at this point pretty fucking traumatized individual, like even when I am the job still makes me nervous. Like
Mm.
doing in-call appointments still makes me nervous.
Mm.
Doing a lot of things still scares me, but that's the only way that I can either get the money or get the accolade or get the certification. Like I don't want to speak in front of 50 people, but I have to do
Mm.
it. But I'm grateful that I have a flexibility at least of hours because
Mm-hmm.
that has helped my mental health so much.
Yeah.
Like I even just changing clubs, something like I was working in the same club just for 3 nights a week in the last couple years, and it's downtown, and just working with tourists and the people that are just inhabiting the area was really, really, I felt trapped
Mm-hmm.
and constantly thought, I'm wasting my time, I'm wasting my life. And then I auditioned at a couple other places. I'm now at 3 different clubs. And even just having the mental flexibility, um, it's wild what it's done for me. So I think about that all the time. And that's just like a small adjustment. But a lot of people
Yeah.
can't necessarily like, oh, I hate my retail job. I guess I'll just get a couple other ones and do those part time.
Yeah.
So, right. And when there's studies about sex work, about why people choose it, why they stay in it, why they don't leave, why they go back to it, it's one of the biggest reported reasons why sex workers choose to do sex work is the flexibility of hours and scheduling. Even if it's not the money, because money isn't guaranteed. I could go to the club and, maybe somebody likes me and I make $150 from them in 15 minutes, and then nobody else likes me and I make
Mm-hmm.
30 for 5 more hours, and then I have to tip out 80, so I go home with like $80 and the
Right.
glamour. So
Yeah.
it is a lot of work. It's not get rich quick for vast majority of people. If it was,
Mm.
everybody would be doing it. And if you think everyone's doing it, they're not. They're not. How many girls are still like, oh, I should just sell foot pics? And I'm like,
Yeah.
where are you going to do that? How are you going to advertise it? How are you going to get paid? How are you going to report that? Like, what are you going to tell the tax man? Like,
Yeah.
LOL. Yeah, it's so easy. Just do it.
Yeah, no, I've had I know several different friends or people in my life who either do OnlyFans actively or have done some form of sex work or whatever it is, and then I also hear friends who are like, oh, I'm just gonna start selling feet pics for whatever, and I'm like, it's probably not gonna work out like that if you unless somebody's just already coming to you actively
Yeah.
because you're posting casual
Here's
pictures on your
money.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Right, here's money for you.
Yeah.
Probably going to be a tough road, but I feel like that's with everything, right? With any sort of business or anything that you venture. And you talked about earlier, which I would love to actually kind of circle back and dig into, is like you were, somehow drawn to this work and you were wanting to go towards it, right? And I feel like that's like a common, I don't know if I want to call it trend or ethos or like mythology, I guess. I find with a lot of people who do something that's meaningful for them is like there's a part of our brain that goes like, oh, I could be really good at this and awesome at this. And then we hit the wall of reality that it's not quite so easy. But there's still some part of us that like is so drawn to it that we kind of go through those harder and rougher challenges and figure the stuff out along the way. So I'm curious, kind of circling back to, you have this criminology degree, you start to step into sex work or stripping. What is it that was like so captivating to you that you were wanting to go through all the ups and downs and make this work for yourself?
Gosh. Well, the fact that I had really hated pretty much all of my other jobs. I worked so I was a clerk in pharmacy. That was really hard because you're dealing with people who will tell you, I'm going to die if I don't get this now or covered by insurance.
Oh.
Okay. And that was 20 years ago. Okay. So I imagine shit's
Yeah.
harder now. So the stress and the strain of that, I worked in an ice cream and candy and coffee shop as a teenager. By a movie theater. You worked alone. That was when cell phones weren't good. You couldn't do anything on your phone. So you had the radio and like People magazine is what I looked at a lot of. And I would get hit on all the time by dads or grandpas. Creepy ass shit. I can still remember some of the gross things said to me. And then one customer made a false complaint against like one of my friends who brought me food. And it was just like, So what else did I do? Why am I getting news pop-ups? Go away. I was a clerk at a Safeway in Southern California. That job is really harsh if you are the person that gets the shopping carts. This is why I try to put my cart away. I don't do it all the time, but I try to bring it close. Because pushing carts sucks in the rain or the heat.
Are these after or before you have your degree?
Oh, before.
Before you have your degree?
When I was,
Okay.
this is high
Okay,
school
cool.
and college. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I was always working. I worked in the mall in a couple different retail stores, and that was absolute hell, dealing with people and their children and their teenagers. And I don't know, just weird shit people will do around service industry workers, like unwrap food and just throw their trash on the ground, like right next to you, like just working with the general public. So yeah, just like a lot of assorted retail stuff. And then I was doing unlicensed hospice care for an elderly woman who was a friend of a friend. And that looked like sitting through the night with her while she was having paranoid schizophrenic attacks, thinking that demons were attacking her.
Could we pause on that real quick?
Yeah.
Are you open to talking about that? I'd love to just
Yeah.
hear. What was your experience working with somebody in hospice in that kind of a situation?
So I, in high school, chose to volunteer at a skilled nursing facility or an old folks home for about a year and a half. I remember being really compelled to like give back or see what's out there or something. I was really inspired hearing another classmate talk about it. And it was depressing, stinky work. Like I can still remember the smell of going home. And it's the opposite of like early life smell. It's the smell of death. It's people dying. And it was old people, elderly people asking, 16-year-old, why doesn't my family visit me? Why can't you give me something to put me to sleep forever? Why can't you kill me? Literally a man screaming in the hallway, kill me, for like an hour. So it's just like underfunded, isolated, end of life situation. And then the staff there, a lot of them were Mexican or Latina women. I don't imagine they were getting paid great. And then a couple management staff that was really stressed out and neurotic. And I can't imagine they were getting paid great either. And they worked long, hard hours. And I was like, Jesus Christ, this is a terrible environment. So, how could I forget? I worked in porn shops for 4 years. So adult retail. So you also work with people that are anxious or stressed out or feeling shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the healthcare, I think about that a lot. People who work in nursing or end of life care, like sweet angels, I couldn't do it.
Yeah. How long were you doing that kind of work for?
So the volunteer thing in high school was like a year and a half. The hospice with that woman, I don't remember. I want to say I gave it a solid like 2 months.
Okay.
It was when I was new to Oregon, and she had like RNs that her mom had hired to come do rotation care, but I was helping her eat, I was taking her to the toilet, I was helping her wipe, I was putting her to bed, I was keeping her company, and I think it was like $12 an hour.
Wow. Was that for you like just the emotional burden that was too rough?
I was 22 years old.
Right.
This woman was like 92.
Wow.
And I remember she started asking me, she's like, oh, dear, I realize we've spent all this time together. I don't know anything about you. So she started asking me, how old are you? And I was like, I'm 22. And oh, God, she's like, it was almost like she was disappointed. She's like, oh, you're just a child. I was like, fuck, I shouldn't be here. So like a week later, I auditioned at the strip club.
Did she say anything to you else like that was like
I don't remember.
Inspired that? Or? Okay, yeah, I'm curious.
I don't remember. I just remember thinking like this is too emotionally sad for at the time like not minimum wage but pretty close to it. And I was young, married. I still had my retail job. I was working full time as an assistant manager for one of the porn shop chains up here. I was getting picked on by a couple of my older coworkers who had wanted the job. They were like 20 years older than me and just mad that I knew more about sales and adult retail. So looking back on that was a hostile environment. My boss cussed at me. I was like, please don't talk to me that way. And he's like, well, next time I'll just fire you. Week later, he accused me of stealing money out of the video arcade, which I would never do because why would you steal money that's tracked and also not mine? I don't steal from people. I won't say where I steal from because we're recording, but I was like, you got me all wrong, boss, but I know what this really is. So he fired me. And so it was at the same time I lost the retail job. It was the first job I'd ever been fired from. And it wasn't even like true. I'm like, this is a false allegation. Fuck you. You're just firing me because you hate your girlfriend and you hate me. And I called you out on cussing at me. And then also I was doing the hospice thing to supplement that. And I was like, fuck, this sucks. And meanwhile, I had been a nude internet model for a couple years, like on the quiet.
When did you start that?
That I started in between when I was just 18, 19.
Wow.
Right. So I knew that I wanted to be hot, like perceived in a way. I just didn't know how yet.
Yes. I know I'm keep interrupting you. Sorry about that.
No,
but
it's good.
All right, cool. It's part of my job. So at 18, 19, you're nude on the internet. And from what I understand too, is that your parents are pretty conservative. So like you were raised in this conservative environment. So can you just walk us through that, I guess, part of the trajectory? Like how did you get that? Like how did you even get the confidence to be posting yourself nude online at 18 or 19? Or was it just like the naivete of not knowing what the internet's going to be yet or what?
It was, I'll say what it was. It was Suicide Girls, which when I was in high school and I was shaving off my eyebrows and I was just discovering like punk rock or the history of it or counterculture or subcultures or all that stuff before it became even more commercialized, which is fine, art and whatever. I'm not bitter. No, it's like, it's funny because 20 years ago, like tattoos were a real job blocker and I am not gatekeeping. Like people should be able to do whatever jobs they're qualified for, but like kids today don't remember how it used to be to where if you tattooed your neck, that was like a commitment. Like you're not having a normal life anymore. So
I feel the same way about gamers, by the way, just as like a gamer. Yeah, because like nowadays, like people who play video games, like
it's
games
cooler
are
now.
it's just part of the culture. And so
Yeah.
people don't even really identify as a gamer. They're just like, oh yeah, like I played this one weird indie game. It's like, if you were growing up when I was a kid or even in college, only the most hardcore people would have
Yeah.
played something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just so weird and different to see how culture is shaped. But anyway, yeah.
It's a proliferation, I think, of more things out into the mainstream, and that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the point was like I was a teenager and I saw tattooed, pierced, shaved, like angry looking hot chicks, and I was like, oh, I want that. I want to be
Mm,
that, and I want that. Um, and so that was also the alternative to like the Playboy aesthetic at the time.
mm,
Now these aesthetics have intermingled, which
yeah.
is cool and art and whatever. But there was more of like a us versus them. Like you're either like a
Mm,
Playboy girl or you're a suicide girl.
mm.
So I was on the and so it's
Were you
weird.
just
Even
like
though hmm?
were you just being your parents' worst nightmare at
I
that point? Was it part
no,
of
I
that
didn't
or was
live
it
at
just your
home.
own? Yeah.
I
Okay.
didn't live
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
home. Yeah, I
Yeah.
moved
Yeah.
out a month before I turned 18 because I was going to college, and they did know about the website. And I
Mm,
actually, this is a fun story. I came home to visit my mom and like do laundry or something. And I was trying to check my account from
mm.
my parents' computer. And my dumbass was just being sloppy. And I was just logged in. And my mom walks by with a basket of laundry. She's like, oh, that girl looks like you.
Yeah.
Is that you? So that was like the coming out to my mom. And I was like, I'm naked. I'm a nude model on the internet. She'd see me looking at the site prior. But anyway, so I remember she was like, we're not going to tell your dad, which was so,
Mm,
we laugh about it now. My parents are now divorced.
mm,
sh- she and I have laughed about it now where she's like, well, your dad is a misogynist, like slut shaming person. So it's kind of funny he got a feminist pornographer daughter. Like that's what you get. Like I'm
mhm.
checking my login for my nude photo stuff a mere 12 feet away from the Playboys and the penthouses stacked by the toilet. So like how dare you have a
Yeah.
problem? I'm an adult.
Mhm.
So, but we did keep it hidden from him for a couple years
Mm,
because we were butting heads politically. I was like, "Wow, your beliefs are garbage. I don't want to live here." My dad was such a weird control freak. Like,
mm.
if you have tattoos, you can't live under my roof. Fine, fuck you. I don't want to be here anyway.
No.
My body, my choice. So I'm really playing with my hair quite a bit. This is how you know we're getting real. Getting real, Cameron.
You're getting flushed.
Yeah. So yeah. So then in that time, I met Isaiah, my first husband, and his parents were like churchy, military conservative, but they have
Mm,
kinder, like more liberal hearts.
sure. Yeah.
So, but either way, we're like, let's get out of this small town area, and so
Mhm.
moved up to Portland.
Mm,
And then I was taking care of myself and living on my own. My parents weren't paying for anything. So after a couple years of stripping, I flew my mom up and we were walking through the community garden by my apartment. I was like, I'm a stripper.
mm.
She's like, okay. I kind of figured you weren't just like cocktailing in there. Yeah. That's the lie trajectory for a lot of us. Is like, I'm waitressing in a strip club. This way it gives you reason to explain why you're there, but you're not really participating in like the most, taboo of activities or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I was an adult. And so for my parents, luckily, because I've been able to financially support myself, and I was married, and I was married twice. And the second time I was married, he had a much better professional job and income than me. So that was one of those ways that
Mhm.
I, as a young female person, was able to socioeconomically elevate myself through
Sure.
marriage to a cis man, which is usually what happens
Mhm.
because guys tend to get paid more for the same jobs and they tend to be older when they marry women younger than them. So,
Mhm.
that's not news to anybody. But so I had stepping stones where I was able to save money. So even that's something that like a lot of people in our age group are not necessarily ever going to be able to live by themselves
Mhm.
or buy a house because they weren't able to get that cushion,
Mhm.
you know,
Well,
in
and I
other
find
ways.
even if you have like the actual I don't know, economic means, like I think if I look back through my history working in restaurants or doing different things, it's like I never learned the skills around money management to be able to even think about what I ought to be doing or how I could be approaching it in a different way, right? Or having systems. And like, I'm neurodivergent as well, so like having a, you know, a spreadsheet that like automatically calculates this stuff for me is like really, really helpful versus trying to do that. And especially if you're working in a cash industry where you're not having a stable, clear paycheck and you don't exactly know how much money you're going to make, it's really tricky, right? To figure out, okay, how much do I save? How much do I not save? How do I balance enjoying my life and like trying to save for whatever the future is? You know, there's a very, very challenging, and then you have to emotionally deal with like the keeping up with the Joneses of your friends, or, you know, I know so many people in restaurants who, you know, they spend their entire tips of that night going out drinking that same night. And it's just like, you can't do much if you do that.
Yeah, you can't do that. I have been criticized for criticizing that type of behavior, and the example that I gave, which I saw, which is why I gave it in writing. I used to had a column for like 5 years in a local print magazine, industry magazine, and so if you're wondering why you can't pay rent in the same 20 minutes that you're showing me your $300 boots you just bought, that's the problem.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so and it's like, I don't want to, I never rate shame. I will never be one of those strippers or providers or sex workers that tells people how much they should charge, or, you know, like, some people can't charge more. Sometimes their clientele aren't wealthy enough, or they don't have enough of them. So,
Sure.
you know, there's a reason why like some sandwiches are $5 and some are $20. Like, they're bullshit reasons, but like everything's a scale of rates and context and whatever. But
yeah, sometimes it's just in the airport, right? And it's
even
not even a better
right,
sandwich. Yeah.
whether you are a stripper that's making $100 in a shift or $700 in a shift, if you can save even like 10 to 50% of what you're making, then when you break your leg or get a staph infection or whatever, can't dance for an amount of time, like, you'll have something. I have worked with people that are like, again, like they're they're making a lot of money, but DoorDash is like $40 for like one meal, you know, and then if you're
Yeah.
tipping. So
I saw this hilarious meme that I think you'd appreciate, where it was like, is like this person's complaining about inflation, and the person just looks back at him, is it inflation or is it the special limousine for your burrito?
oh my God.
He's like,
burrito.
yeah, he's like, special limousine for my burrito. It's like,
It sucks. It's really hard. No, that's part of the struggle of living, is like,
mm-hmm.
just when you don't have the energy because you work long hours and you're so tired. And that's one of those things where like, I didn't have DoorDash or any of that shit on my phone until like 2 years ago, and I want to take it off again. But like, that's also part of the thing where I think we see stuff on social media. So there's a standard of care we seem to believe in, where I will even find myself thinking like, I should eat a full meal right now. I should cook a full meal.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, no, there's an apple. There's an apple right there. Eat the fucking apple. You'll feel better. Eat the apple. Oh, look at me. I feel better. Okay, now I can make something reasonable, whatever. But yeah, so even just like, it's okay to scrounge. I found out some people don't eat leftovers. And we can move on shortly, but I still think about this. I want to pose this question on Instagram because I've heard people that are like, no, I don't eat leftovers. I never eat leftovers. And I'm like, dude, that's like half of what I eat.
Yeah, that's interesting, because it's like, to me, does that mean they would never meal prep? Because I feel like meal prepping is just like an easy way of circumventing some of these issues, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, who else among us has like meal prepped and then be like, this doesn't sound good anymore. I don't want to eat.
I guess so.
Straight to the trash.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm such a person who, like, most of my meals are like, I can make them tasty enough for me that I have like that. Like, just mixing it with different seasons makes it a big difference for me. But then, like, for most everyday meals, I just can eat pretty bland food, and I'm fortunate in that regard. Like, I don't need a lot of complexity on a regular basis, even though like, I'm a huge foodie. Like, I would, if I could, I would just eat out at a fancy restaurant every night and be, you know, hugely fed that way. But yeah.
Do you like sharing like plates with friends? Do you like ordering a bunch of stuff?
Yeah, like and I agree. You know, again, I was in the service industry, so I love being able to treat my friends in that way, where it's like I understand enough to like understand about wine, but also like how to help the server be a really good server for us and just make the experience really fun. Like one of my favorite things to
Oh,
do on my
nice.
birthday is I'll just go out to a nice restaurant by myself because
Mm,
I like that experience. I like feeling taken care of. I like seeing what they're going to guide me to and having a cool experience that way.
I relate to all of that actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, to the bland meal, like I tell people, like if you can like use like a rice and like find some sauces and seasonings, like it doesn't have to be, yeah. But also,
Mhm.
yeah, I like taking people out, and I don't know anything about wine, but the rest of it, yeah, I relate to all that. But yeah, no, totally. Let's just like meal prepping can save you so much money, or just having like on easy hand, like I
Mhm.
have a lot of apples. Okay, one of the things as a parent, as a athlete, as a person with 7 jobs, as a neurodivergent person, um, I have discovered that one of the good things to invest in is weekly produce delivery. I'm not going to say what the company brand is, but I know that if I have my auto setting stuff, a box of fruits and vegetables
Mm.
will show up to my door once a week. And like, if I don't eat it, I'm gonna feel bad. And I've
Mm.
like done that a couple times where I felt bad. I don't like feeling bad. So now I just fucking eat it. And now I'm getting my
Mhm.
healthy stuff. So it's really, you just have to like parent yourself. And that's so hard for a
Yeah.
lot of us. Like they didn't teach us this stuff in high school.
No, and it's tough because you also don't know where to go or you don't know who to trust necessarily because there's a lot of people advertising or selling these things and not even in a way that you have to pay for them, but it could just be somebody's advice column or whatever it is. And you're like,
Mm,
there's so many people telling me what to do and I
mm-hmm.
don't know what to do. I actually think that's one of the challenges that we face right now is like we have so much, you mentioned being on social
Choice.
media. Yeah, so many choices. And it's also harder to listen to like our own voice and all that, right? Like, how do I actually tune into like what is going to work for me? Because I am not that person or that person. There might be a piece of what they say that works for me, but I
Mm-hmm.
probably can't just do what they did because I don't have the same set of circumstances and benefits and privileges and challenges or uniquenesses about just who I am in my situation that won't exactly work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What else?
I think the place I want to dig into, and you kind of were just talking about it, was around your neurodivergence. And I don't know when you started self-identifying as like autistic, but I heard you mention it. I think as early as 2020. I want to say. Um,
I got screened in, I think it was 2021,
hmm, okay.
because when I got the results, I remember, so my beloveds that died in 2021, it was February and it was October of 2021.
Hmm,
February, the person who died I lived with, and I was actually seated here
hmm,
in this chair reading the results. And I remember I said aloud to their ghost, because I did this for about a year and a
hmm,
half, because when you live with someone for 3 years, as you may know, you're used to shouting shit to each other from between
hmm,
rooms. So he was dead, but the compulsion was there. And I remember being like, hey, Brian, results are in. I'm autistic. Also, probably a little OCD.
hmm,
What's the other one? Attachment wounding.
hmm,
This is when you have, remember I said I don't have like sexual trauma related to childhood, but I have some other like emotional
hmm,
stuff. So, attachment wounding is a theory, or the idea is basically that it can be a type of complex PTSD, because imagine you're a child going to your parent either like I'm hungry or I love you or look at my
hmm,
drawing, and your parent is very inconsistent in their responses. So this could look like sweetie or I'm fucking busy right now,
hmm.
or something else.
Yeah.
So that attachment wounding, so constantly being very vigilant about like, how is my partner? How are the people around
Sure.
me? Is everyone happy? What do I need to
Hmm.
get them? Yeah, but I do remember getting the results. It was 2021, and autism is like talked about differently, thank goodness,
Yeah.
now than it was 20 years ago.
Can you break down how it like from your perspective and how it relates to you, like what it is autism, and then how do you identify with that label in particular?
So I did quite a bit of reading about it, and our brains are wired differently. And I've thought about this so many times before, where like bodies are made up of so many billions, gajillions, I don't even know how you could quantify it, parts and pieces. what are the odds that like you're gonna get like an optimum working machine, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So what that looks like is like my machine, I consider some parts very strong and some parts like not very strong.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of them are pretty adequate. I am a hyperlexic person. So one of my earliest memories, that means I talk a lot and I read a lot.
Mm.
One of my earliest memories of kindergarten was number one, Tim Arnold spit on the floor. That's his name. He's out there somewhere. I don't know where he is now, but someone's like, Tim Arnold spit on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that grossed me out. Anyway, I remember looking at the letters around, you know, the capital A, B, C, D, and then lowercase a,
Mm-hmm.
B, C, D going all the way around. And I remember being like, okay, because I knew how to read in kindergarten.
Mhm.
But I was like, something's wrong. And then I figured, oh, this is the Spanish one. So like I was trying to figure out the
Mm.
patterns. Um, I now, if I look at a text, like a paragraph, I can read it all in like half a second.
Mm.
So my superpower with words is I can read them and they also just like shoot out at me. So I notice
Mm.
if I'm driving, walking, whatever, and I'm around other people, 90 something percent of the time, unless this person's machine is also wired this way, I will see graffiti and ads and stickers and typos and all kinds of things that most
Mm.
people don't.
Hmm. I
Um,
noticed that with your Instagram actually, because you take a lot of photos of like, you know, it'll say like they something or like little graffiti pieces around while
mhm,
you're walking through Portland, it seems.
I love those. Yeah, those really cheer me up anyway. But so, or like, I remember reading that for a lot of autistic people, some of their senses are like way pronounced or stronger. My
Mm-hmm.
vision is 2018.
Hmm.
So I, instead of 2020, I
Is
can
that better
see
or worse?
better.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I have really good robot vision. I can see stuff really far away.
I say it's like really scary for anybody dating you, right? You're like, you just see everything.
Yeah. And smell. It's
Yeah,
really, it
I
stresses
wanted to
people out.
I
It
wanted to
really,
ask you about that because I noticed one of the things that in your other episodes is like you often mention smell. Like you'll
hmm
talk about either they smell really nice or people want to be with somebody because they smell really nice. So like, I don't know, what's your relationship with smell? Because you have such a, it seems very important to you.
Remember when I said I watched a lot of nature shows, or I used to?
Yeah.
So my mom was pretty good about getting us involved in like community activities. I'll definitely give her that. She brought us to the zoo and the wild animal park down in San Diego, like quite a bit for classes and like
Mm.
childhood, you know, education, immersion stuff. And I remember we did some kind of exercise. We were sniffing all these little scented things, but the lesson was that mother and young find each other by scent because
Mm.
it develops before your eyesight does.
Mm.
And also, if you think about human beings sleeping next to each other or existing before light or fire, you find each other based off of, I'll
Mm.
cuddle you.
Mm.
Um, I, when I start dating someone, I need to know what they smell like before we
Mm.
proceed. So that is one of those things where I could think you are physically attractive. I love your ethics. I love your mind. You know, there's so many things that are admirable about you. But if when we hug, I don't want to like be in your skin, work.
Mm.
Because I'm not going to want to
Yeah.
kiss you and I'm not going to want to put my mouth like in your
Yeah.
holes if I don't like them.
Yeah. No, I've felt that before where there was somebody that I was very, very attracted to. And it's like we got into that moment for a kiss and it was just like, oh, this isn't, and it's not even that they had bad breath, right? It's just there's something about how they smell that my nervous system's like, nope, this is not a person that you are engaging with in this way.
Right. And so some evolutionary biologists will say that, you know, if someone smells good to you, it means your genes are compatible. You'll make big, strong baby.
Hmm.
So if you smell someone's off-putting to you, that is nature being like, nope, don't breed.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I would love to know more about that. But yes, sense, smell is really important to me and it can also tell me a lot. And
Hmm.
like, so I think that's part of the autism thing. And so that can be helpful
Mm-hmm.
if it's like something is on fire and I can
Yeah.
smell it before anybody else. And this
Mm-hmm.
happens multiple times.
Hmm.
So I like to think, you know, if I had a place in a different society, I would be some kind of like watchdog or something because
That makes sense with the insomnia or like other pieces too, right? Where you're like
Mhm.
very hyper vigilant in a sense, right? Yeah.
Right. So, however, what are some of the bad things? Oh gosh. Visualizing myself on a map, like, is I no, I can't. I won't survive. Like, I need a navigator. It's like I might have lost where we parked. Like when I
Mm,
park somewhere, I've lived in the city for 17 years. I will
mm,
take a picture of where I park, like the street or the sign, or I will screenshot it on my phone.
mm,
And because I'll just forget. Because I'm not
mm,
thinking about where I am location wise related to where I'm going the way I should be, or it just doesn't happen for me. I don't know. It's really
mm.
fucking weird. But that's one of those things that, like, not fun and it's not cool if I take you somewhere and then we can't find the car. But I could tell you what all the graffiti said on the way to the place we just went.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So like when basically my whole life in school age, it was very common for teachers to say to my mom at like parent teacher conference, or because my mom worked in the school district, like there's something going on with her. We don't really know what it is. She can read and write real fucking good,
Mm,
but the math sucks and she sucks at talking to people her own age.
mm,
Is consistently like, I'm glossing over.
mm,
Um, And recently it was pointed out to me that a lot of times autistic people whose special interest is other people, like psychology,
mm,
studying people, like they are overlooked as neurodivergent because
mm.
it's considered kind of an altruistic thing. There's that word again,
Yeah.
altruism, to want to learn more about people. So, like,
Yeah.
oh, you want to be into psychology? Like, yeah, that's not a
Weird.
hyperfixation at all. So I've just been trying, study like how do people talk to each other? What is acceptable? How
Mm,
can we banter in a way that's okay? I am too honest a lot of the time. My
mm,
therapist says that I react to things differently than a lot of people.
mm. Like what?
I,
Like what's something you would react to differently?
a stranger coming up to me and commenting on the way I look. I'm not going to be like necessarily like rude about it, but I hate small talk and I
Mm,
hate random comments about appearance.
mm,
But a lot of society functions this way. And that looks like,
mm.
oh, hey, nice to see you. Did you get your hair cut? Yeah, a week ago, oh, it looks good. Okay, thank you. Like, I don't know.
You don't know what to do with that information.
Yeah, like, why?
Yeah.
One that I get a lot is, what tattoo shops do you go to?
Mm.
6 different ones come to mind. Okay, 2 of them are closed, and then 2 of these people are in different states. Like, do you want me to answer you? Like, now I'm confused.
Yeah. How detailed or thorough a response do you want, or are you just
Exactly.
trying to
Yeah.
connect with me in some way?
Yeah. Um, so yeah, sometimes like, or there's been a few times this does not, why am I getting bullied at work? Sometimes people will ask me a question and I just didn't know that they didn't really want like a real response. Like, hey, how do
Hmm.
you think the event's going? Oh, the food's pretty bad and the guests seem annoyed. Oh, is that not what you wanted to hear? Like, it's great, like,
Yeah.
um, so that's a process I go through where like when someone's asking me something, it's like, what is the actual answer I think I'm going to give? No, wait, don't do that yet.
Mm,
What are they actually asking me? So that's a process I
mm,
have to go through. And so yeah, it was just repeated like I don't understand what interaction just happened, or like why am I not getting along in like spaces where I feel like I should? And then I got screened.
mm.
And I remember besides speaking aloud to Brian's ghost, I called my mom and was like, guess who has some answers for all those questions we had in my adolescence about why I am
Mm.
these ways.
Yeah.
Um, or meltdowns, autistic
Mm,
meltdowns.
mm,
So a tantrum is not the same as a meltdown. They can look the same. So if this didn't make sense to me for a long time, my mom, imagine like you make your kid breakfast, you wake up your kid sits at the table, your kid bursts into tears because the food you made them is like wrong or something, or it's not the food they wanted. Okay.
mm,
First world problems, like shut up and eat it, like deal with it, whatever. I was having meltdowns before school because I didn't want to go to school. You know, it wasn't like, oh no, I hate pancakes, or like, oh, mom made me toast and I hate toast. It was like, oh, I'm confronted with the reality of like, I have to go to the place where like I don't have friends and I'm reading my books alone all day. You know, and people tease
Mm,
me for my clothes or whatever. So, a lot of times if someone like if an autistic person is shutting down or crying, you see me getting
yeah.
choked up because it
Yeah.
reaches to a spot in my soul. It's like
Yeah.
they're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So,
I'm curious with that for like, how do you make sense of like whether that was, for lack of a better word, like an autistic response versus like a response to just the fact that you were being bullied, or like, is it just a combination of those two? Like, how
I
do
don't
you
know.
suss that out?
I don't know. I only
Yeah.
really started breaking that down. I was like, why did I start crying at breakfast? The food. It
Yeah.
wasn't the food. So that's my best guess,
Yeah. Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I'm really curious about that because I think like I resisted labels of like ADHD for a really long time. And then as the things started like lining up for me, I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And like, okay, let's try medication. Let's try this out. And so I found it to be very helpful. And something
Mm.
that I just had a guest on recently, and he was talking about, and we started off talking about labels. And one of the other pieces he mentioned was like how the diet that gets you healthy is not necessarily the one that keeps you healthy.
Mm.
And I kind of think about
Mm.
that too with like labels and stuff that as well, right? Where like I wonder if like, okay, cool, I've learned about myself to a certain point with this label because it helps me make sense of the reality that I'm experiencing. And that label is still just a label, right? We kind of made it up. Like it does
Mm-hmm.
point to a bunch of these different things, but we're kind of just like throwing on words onto a
Mm-hmm.
thing. And then I'm finding other people that relate to this same way of cognating or existing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a part of me that also exists outside of that label as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm just curious what if any of that resonates with you?
ADHD is the other one I forgot to mention. You said that, and I was like, oh yeah, that one. I have that one too. ADHD comes up for me a lot, actually.
Hmm.
That's a ooh. Well, let's see what comes up for me. Having been diagnosed, it's not like a badge, it's not a shield, it's
Mm-hmm.
just yeah, a bit of information. So if I'm disagreeing with someone, and like you'll see this on the internet sometimes, one of my internet friends, because we haven't met in person, but we've like talked and communicated, and he'll talk about racism and I'll talk about horophobia. And so like we learn from each
Mm-hmm.
other. And he said something he encounters is people being like, I'm not racist, I'm autistic. That's why I'm being
Mm-hmm.
insensitive or whatever. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, so that don't do that. The way that I will use this new information about myself is, so for example, what I'm thinking of, I'm anticipating a shift that I'm going to have later. And in the dressing room with 5 to let's say 12 dancers, people, women, strippers, sometimes what happens, and this brings me back to school, is someone will ask a question. How do I look for this thing on Google? Let's say this is the question. This has never happened before. And then I will give a specific response. I'll say, "Oh, Thai food plus Belmont
Mm-hmm.
food. Oh, you want to find out about the place that got robbed? News." You know, I'll tell
Mm-hmm.
them like, "Oh, you asked me a question? This is how you find the," and then someone else will scoff at me for giving the answer. The fuck? Why did you ask? We shame education. So
Yeah.
like literally in school, when I figured out that like it's not cool to know the answer sometimes, people would rather just speculate. That shit
Sure.
drives me insane. So as I have noticed, this has happened before, I'll wonder why I'm getting frustrated like in a dressing room, and then it's like, oh yeah, duh, you're autistic, and all of these people are peopling right now, and you're annoyed at how they're peopling because how they people is not how you people. But you're forced to just deal with it right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm annoying to other people too. Absolutely. I see sometimes other people like being very chatty or very like verbose, like very talking a lot about their complaints or their negativity to where that's like
Mm-hmm.
impacting other people. And I've been that person before too, and some of it just takes practice. But sometimes knowing that I'm autistic helps me check in to be like, I'm annoyed by the smell that nobody else can smell.
Right. Yeah.
This also came up like 3 weeks ago. I was at one of the 3 or 4 clubs that I work at right now, and I was like, it smells like feet in the lap dance room. And they're like, ew, where? And I'm like, everywhere, the whole floor. the entire fucking floor. What are you talking about? Where? All of it. And so they're all like, oh yeah, well, it's probably never been cleaned. And I'm like, oh God. So I weighed in my mind. I was like, you're having an autistic moment where like what I think needs to happen isn't necessarily like what everyone else thinks needs to happen. But if this is where I made this decision, this is how my guiding compass. If I can smell the foot smell, there's a chance that other, maybe autistic clients, people
Yeah.
can smell it too.
Yeah.
So I messaged the owner and was like, hey, just so you know, I can smell, it smells like this in this area. And she was like, oh, where? And I told her, and she's like, okay, we'll get someone right on that. And so what has happened historically is either the boss is like, thank you for this information, I will address this, or they punish you for telling them something that they didn't want to hear. You've
Yeah.
made more work for them, or now they have to be accountable for it.
Yeah. That reminds me, honestly, of my buddy Chris, one of my earliest episodes I did, and he is ADHD and autistic, and he talks about being in the military. And very similar kind of situation where he would like,
Scary.
yeah, well, he would get into places where he'd be like, the way you're doing, I mean, do this is fucking stupid, and it's wrong. And like initially, he's getting in trouble for it, right? But he's stubborn enough to where eventually that leads to him getting promoted because
He was able
he's
to show them how to be more effective.
Right, exactly. And it's like learning how to actually do this correctly and that kind of stuff. Which, like, again, that's part of where my brain goes with like sometimes of the autistic part is like, is it just like an intelligence thing or with the other emotion component? And then it's like, okay, and then you just develop the ability to figure out how do I communicate this to people who are maybe more emotionally sensitive than I am or have gone through other things that like they don't have that same experience. And so we learn how to effectively communicate or something,
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Which is a lot of the work too, because that can be frustrating to me where I'm like, why should I have to pad your ego?
Sure. Yeah. No, I agree. There's this great book. I actually thought about you with it. But I think it's one that I would recommend to like anybody. It's this book called Words That Work. And the subtitle of that is It's Not What You Say, It's What They Hear. And it's actually written by Dr. Frank Luntz, who was a Republican political, what do you call it?
Advisor?
Yeah. Like he led
consultant?
campaigns and stuff. He led
Okay.
campaigns like that. And then he starts off basically talking about like he's in an interview with all of the Democratic leaders because they were so tired of like losing that they like interviewed him about what to do. And so he talks a lot about just what you actually do to say things to understand what people are actually saying. And I look at the current world that we're in and I see so much of this issue where there are so many people with great things to say that are very true, but like how they end up saying them hurts other people in a different place or different direction, right? Where it's like you're actually hurting your message, but you're so committed to being right or saying it the way that you want to say it rather than looking at like, is this persuading people? Like, what's the goal of your information? Is it to just get it out? Or is it to actually persuade people who think and feel differently from you to your position?
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of there's the Dunning-Kruger syndrome. Like
Yeah.
the less you know about something, the more confident you
Oh, is
might
that?
feel.
I was thinking of Overton Window when you said Dunning-Kruger, but yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Which one are you thinking of? What's
So
the
Overton Window is like the level of acceptable behavior. So tattoos, for example, right? Like at one point, like the Overton Window is like if you have a tattoo, you're burning in hell. We're gonna like pitchfork you and all that kind of stuff. And now we're like, oh, I can dress up with a neck tattoo, and that's probably what the hostess at my restaurant looks like, right? So that the Overton Window for tattoos has expanded. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting. Some people, it doesn't matter. I'm sure I've been this person, but like sometimes the information that you're given just does not align with what you want or what you know to be true in your own experience. So you're just never going to accept it. And so one of the things, this helps me have a little more compassion for clients who treat me in a way that I don't like because they're afraid of getting ripped off or arrested. So yeah, sometimes people will be like, oh, I would like the service. And I say, okay, can we get the business part out of the way first? May I collect the monies? And they're like, oh, you don't trust me? And it's like, No, well, I really don't now, but they're coming from a place of what if I pay for this service and the dancer leaves,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. I'm coming from a place of what if I give you this service and then you leave.
Right.
I'm in the more endangered space and them's the rules wherever we
Mm-hmm.
are. So, I get the money first. But every once in a while I'll ask people like, have you had a bad experience in the club before? And sometimes they have.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they have. And sometimes they haven't. And it's just that they've been raised, I believe, by media and society to be suspicious of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Suspicious or untrusting. So
When you said so
yeah.
much distrust within just, not that all your clientele are men, but there's so much distrust between genders, right? Like often.
I
Yeah.
always hated that. God. As
Yeah.
a kid, so when I was a kid, I wanted to be a boy. I
Hmm.
used a boy version of my name. My family members called me that. Some of them still do, actually, like the oldest ones.
What's the boy name if you're comfortable
Not gonna
sharing? Okay,
say.
no, no
I
worries.
know, yeah. I know. Ooh, we found something mysterious. But like I wore my dad's old clothes. Like I very
Mm-hmm.
much was like, this is my identity. And that's before we were saying trans,
Mm-hmm.
really. I'm a non-binary person now. I definitely do more like femme presentation for a lot of the works that I do.
Mm-hmm.
I do like to mask it up, masculinize myself around the house a little bit more and with partners and stuff. But which some of my audience likes and they know, and then other clients really, really need to believe that I am a woman for them to
Mm-hmm.
have arousal. So yeah, sure, fine, whatever, I'm a woman. Um, I don't know. It's just like there's so many ways I could go with this, but like even as a kid, I noticed so much hatred between men and women, the way they talk about each other in dating, in relationship, like, oh, you know how men are, or you know how women are. And it's like, no, I
Yeah.
don't. But like,
Yeah.
what have you been through? I think about this a lot before I had a child. A lot of the women around me are like, I hate men or fuck dudes or whatever. And it's like because they're traumatized, because they've been through some hard shit. But also, like, when you start having children, if you have a child that has a penis, so you're under the assumption that it's going to be a boy, like, how are you going to treat that child?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then working in therapy groups, I've definitely worked with women who some of them are able to recognize that they have resentment at, the father of the child. And like sometimes they might take it out on the child. And this is how
Yeah.
cycles of abuse perpetuate. So I really do my best to just see each other as people.
Mm.
Like what you look like or your genitals or how you were raised are definitely clues and context for the life that you know and what you've been through.
Mm-hmm.
But I really just try to treat people as humans. That means like opening the door for anybody, regardless of what they look like.
Hmm.
Or if somebody wants a lap dance, I'm going to, check in with them about their comfort and their consent.
Yeah.
And so I think, yeah, we could do a lot to heal gender relationships if more people would not be so oppositional, but also trying to have space and patience for like the oppositional attitude comes from probably like places of hurt.
Yeah. Well, I think like what I heard you say and a lot of that, and you were talking about, seeing people as people is, I think it's just that, right? When you start to see somebody as a person versus the label, right? And we can do work to see beyond the label, even if we use gendered terms or these different things, but the emotional intelligence it takes and the work it takes internally to be able to see like each person as an individual, because our brains aren't wired for that, right? Our brains are designed to streamline. Like we don't want to have to look at a doorknob every time and be like, what the fuck is that? Like I don't know what this is, right? Like so it's like it's a biological feature.
Mhm.
And it's also this thing that can create a lot of racism or create a lot of problems or challenges in our lives because we don't just see that human. And I love the fact that you're like, how would I want to approach any human, right? I want to know about their consent, their comforts, their boundaries, and they have a different full on lived experience than I do. And I
Mhm.
don't know what that is. I can make assumptions and I can pick up on behavioral cues and smells and all these things, but
Mhm.
fundamentally I don't know.
Smells. Ah, the smell. It's been surprising. That was a thing when I started doing strip club work is like even just hearing guys that would come in with women or hearing the women that would come in with the guys and be like, "Oh, it's okay. I can touch her because I'm a girl too." And it's like, I don't
Mm,
want your fucking claws on my titties either.
mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
So that was a thing where I'm like, no, that annoys me. Or the implication that a lot of strippers want to be more like sexual, like on other women because like
Hmm.
women are safer. It can be a delight if you're not used to having women clients. It can be delightful for some people.
Hmm.
Otherwise, a lot of strippers kind of cringe when we see a group of women coming because we don't expect you to tip that great because a lot of women are like, "Oh, we're the same. It's a sisterhood." And it's
Hmm.
like, "No, you're still a patron.
Yeah.
You know,
They're
you're
coming
still
for moral
engaging."
support instead of
Yeah,
as
I
a
don't want
client.
moral
Yeah.
support. No,
Yeah.
like that's not.
Yeah.
If I wanted moral support, I would join like a book club or something, knitting circle, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, Elle, this has been super, super awesome. We're kind of like wrapping up near the end here. Although I feel like I could have you on for round 2, 3, 4, and 5, and there's so many places to explore with you.
You're so fun
Uh,
to talk to. You
Thank
ask
you. I
great
appreciate that.
questions.
Thank you. Yeah, that was, yeah. Maybe I'll tell that story at another point, but that's basically why I started a podcast is like I realized at some point through my life that whenever I was in a class or I was in different places, people would be like, "Oh, that's a great question," and I just thought that was like a
Just
thing that people did, and I was like, maybe this is like what I do is I ask questions.
asking.
Yeah, but it also is annoying, right? Like I probably couldn't just find you on the street and get you for 90 minutes. So then
Definitely
if I
not.
start a podcast, I'm like, hey, if we record it and we put it online, can I ask you all the questions I want to
Exactly.
know?
Exactly. Well, this was, you extended an invitation. I consented.
Yeah,
Totally. Yeah, go ahead.
perfect.
Yeah.
So the one question I ask all my guests at the end of the episode is just what's one question that you would have for the audience that might shift their perspective or have them consider something in a different way?
A question for the audience.
Mhm.
Mm. Do you feel good about the ways that you treat people who are working? Consider that.
Beautiful.
And
Is it work?
if you don't, ask yourself if it's because you need to feel better than someone else.
Hmm. When you say working, just to clarify, are you specifically meaning sex work in general or just like work in general?
Pumping your gas or giving you
Hmm.
coffee or checking out your books or checking out your
Hmm.
groceries, or giving you your mail.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Beautiful. Elle, this was, again, just a fantastic conversation. Anywhere you want to send people to, anything you want to plug at the end of this episode?
Yeah. Yeah. Find my podcast on Spotify or Apple, They Talk Sex or
Mhm.
theytalksex.com. Find me in a Portland strip club. My website is stripperwriter.com.
Great. Thanks, Elle. This has been awesome, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Cam.